the joy triangle. What it really is a resilience triangle, but I like the idea that it will eventually get you to joy in your life. And this is 3 minutes a day. I do it for 3 minutes a day because I want it to be accessible to anybody. So sit in stillness for 1 minute. And what I like to say to everybody out there is this is when you have to put your phone away. So the phone's away, it's just you. You're just sitting in stillness for 1 minute. Then once you do that, I want you to take 1 minute and think about or draw or journal about what you're grateful for. And thinking about what is your intention for the day? It's not your to-do list. It's not, this is what I intend to get done today. It's your to-be list. How do you want to show up today? What is your intention for the day? Whose life do you want to impact?
Thank you so much for taking the time to tune into today's episode of Empowered in Health. I am so excited to have Jen Rigley here with me, and we are going to be talking about all things women's empowerment and how to really continue to step into living your best life into your 40s, 50s, and beyond. So Jen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here too. And like we just talked about a little bit, is we just have very common approach that we take in terms of showing up for the people in our lives and for the people that might be following us. So I'm really excited about today as well.
Absolutely. It's such a gift to be able to have these real, deep, authentic conversations with other women. And Jen, I'm just excited to hear your perspective, hear your story, and hear how you serve in this space, because like you said, we all need it. We all need this level of sharing and transparency and being open and honest about our journeys so we can learn and do better, but we can also inspire and empower others to do better. So Jen, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your mission and your personal challenges and kind of where you have landed in this season of your life. You know, you've shared a lot with me behind the scenes as far as your story and where you are now, but share that a little bit today with the audience.
I will. Great. And stop me at any time if I go on too long. But, so most importantly, what I do is I encourage, support, and inspire. And as you mentioned, empower women, primarily women in midlife. So 40s, 50s, 60s, or whatever midlife means to you. Someone could be in their 80s and think about that as maybe their midlife. But I really encourage women to primarily understand and really feel and acknowledge that they can create a new story for their life. Because by the time we get to midlife or even before, we often have multiple challenges, traumas, grief shows up in our life, and we don't really acknowledge that. We talk about, and society talks about, oh, middle age, oh, you're tired, oh, you're getting old. But what we don't talk about is by the time we've reached this age, we carry a lot of weight on us.
Yes.
From my story in particular, which may be unique to me, but everybody has a story that has similar parts, is I lost my father when I was very young. And so I had some traumatic things happen in my childhood. But at that point, we didn't talk to therapists. We didn't do a family counseling session, and we never talked about it again. So that was a significant trauma that I never processed. And I know there's other people or women listening today that probably have something similar in their background. But that wasn't the only thing that happened. I've had multiple other tragic events in my life with family members. I lost my brother-in-law in a terrible, terrible accident, and I lost my sister in a terrible car accident. And so for me, throughout my life, I just had these repeated tragic events, but never really properly addressed them. And what I say is I just stuffed the grief down deep.
Yeah.
And it was more recently when I lost my mother and I was grief-stricken, truly grief-stricken, that all of these things started coming back to me. And I had that thought going through my mind. And I know other women have this thought on occasion as well. But I was like, is this all there is to life?
Yeah.
Because it was just all I could think about were all these challenges or tragic things that had happened throughout my life. And during that time as well, when my mother had passed, I had lost my job and I had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was just down on the floor, not sure how I was going to get up. But I did. I heard a whisper and it got me up off the floor. And I started creating things in my life to help get me back to the point where I could just show up. It started with my goal was just to show up
Yeah.
because I have 3 daughters. And I was like, someone has to take them to school and somebody has to take care of them and feed them. So it was really just about getting myself up and going again. But then I went through a lot of processes, a lot of deep thinking, a lot of introspection.
Yeah.
And I eventually healed myself. And I found one day I was actually able to experience joy again. And I thought,
Yeah.
okay, if I did this, I know other women can too.
Yeah.
And it is a process, but I just want women to know you can do it.
Yeah, you can do it. And that's such a powerful message that we all need to hear in our life. Because like you said, we all have a story. We all have some level of adversity or trauma that we've experienced at some point. And when there are people ahead of us that have gone through such significant amounts of loss and things like that, that can share those hopeful words, it makes a really big difference in how we feel with pressing forward on our own journeys. And so I just appreciate your transparency, Jen, and talking a little bit about what you've gone through and the different levels of trauma and adversity that you've experienced, because it's a lot. It's a lot. One of the things you shared was there were a lot of seasons or years where you kind of just stuffed that grief deep down inside you and didn't really know necessarily how to manage it or what to do to manage it or how to essentially work through it. And then once you got to the loss of your mom, everything started to kind of crop up. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about kind of from an overall health standpoint, mentally, physically, emotionally, and your overall well-being. When you say all that grief started to crop up and you kind of realized that this was something that you needed to figure out how to work through in order to move forward in your life, like what did that feel like and what did that look like?
So, one of the ways it looked like for me was a breast cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it in the moment. I was able to look back later and say, there's studies that show, and I think, everyone's heard, but stress really impacts your life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I feel like I had been carrying a very heavy, stressful burden almost since I was a little girl. And so I feel that was one way that it showed up. So I wasn't properly taking care of myself. And we all hear about things like, especially in middle age, but it can really happen at any time when we're overburdened, is we're tired, we're
Yep.
fatigued. It's not that I didn't want to have joy in my life. There was no room for me to laugh or think about something funny, or because I was just so focused on, okay, what has to get done.
Yeah.
So some pretty serious issues with depression was another way it showed up. But I came from the school of, we don't talk about those things.
Yeah.
We don't go to therapy.
Yeah.
So I think at one point I was like, I had to go talk to somebody because I was worried for myself. So I did. But in general, it wasn't where I'm like, okay, I'm having challenges or issues and I'm going to go to therapy to get help with that. I think there's a lot of women our age that, feel that way, that it's a stigma that, well, we don't want to tell anybody about it. So physically it shows up, mentally it shows up. So multiple ways that it shows up in our lives.
Yeah, and it does. You're hitting the nail on the head. And I think it's so common for women to really feel like they're just supposed to manage all the things. Like we're just supposed to figure it out. This is just the way it is. And essentially asking for help or voicing that we maybe need someone to help guide us is some sort of weakness. And I know that's something that I've had to work through. And I know so many women, my clients included, that have this level of feeling like they're somehow weak or not capable if they end up needing support or need to ask for help. And that's really not the case. And the way we continue to break down that wall and that stigma that you continue to talk about, because it's very real, is by sharing, right? Doing exactly what we're doing right now, talking about how this is my reality. And this is the reality of so many others that I've spoken to, the more vulnerable I become. And so, Jen, I'm just grateful for you in coming into this space and sharing your honest truth, because I have no doubt that there is a woman somewhere that's going to be listening to this that can see herself in your story and in your journey and is going to figure out ways to start to really prioritize the help and the care and the support that she may need. Because at the end of the day, we aren't meant to life alone. We are not meant to life alone.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Jen, I'd love to talk a little bit about some of your specific work with Flourishing Over 50. I know you have frameworks. I know you have, methodologies and things like that that you start to utilize in your work when you're talking to women and you really want to help them feel empowered in their midlife journey and beyond. Share a little bit more about that with us. I'd love to hear more of the ins and outs of it and how it kind of works.
So I actually created I call it a framework, but in my mind, it's a journey.
Okay.
And because what I talked about is it's not like you wake up one day and all of a sudden everything's better, or you say, well, I don't want to live this way. I want things to be different. It is truly a healing process, a healing journey. So based on my experience and not only what helped me personally, but when I created this journey, I created it with the mind of being able to start where you are and start with little steps. It wasn't something where I wanted somebody to feel overwhelmed or it was too much. And so it's a 7-step process. And I talk a lot about step one, which is really the most important, but also very accessible, very easy. And that is what you had mentioned before. It's the joy triangle.
Yeah.
So you want me to go through that?
Yeah. I would love
Okay.
for you to hear more because I
Yeah.
think the reason I love having conversations like this and having people share the differences in their perspective is because we all think about teaching these different facets of wellness in different ways. And when we're thinking about, rewriting our story or working through trauma or redefining, where our life is going, I want to hear what your brain teaches because it's unique from everyone else. So yes, please do share.
So, and this is just simple. Anybody can do it at any time. And whether you're really challenged right now and struggling, this will be a little something to help you out. Or things are going okay in your life, but they could be better. This is a great practice. It's called the Daily Joy Practice. It's based on something called the Joy Triangle. What it really is a resilience triangle, but I like the idea that it will eventually get you to joy in your life. And
Yeah.
so if you just picture a 3-sided triangle, and on one side, where we start is sitting in stillness. So, and this is 3 minutes a day. And I do it for 3 minutes a day because I want it to be accessible to anybody.
Yeah.
I can't necessarily sit down and meditate for 20 minutes a day. And I know with your family life, you're really busy and some of these things would be hard for you. But this one, it's 3 minutes. So sit in stillness for 1 minute. And what I like to say to everybody out there is this is when you have to put your phone away. So the phone's away. It's just you. You're just sitting in stillness for 1 minute. Then once you do that, I want you to take 1 minute and think about or draw or journal about what you're grateful for. So for in that minute that day, take that 1 minute to think about what you're grateful for. And then the third part of it is kind of pulling all of those together and thinking about what is your intention for the day. And what I want you to think about is it's not your to-do list. It's
Yeah.
not, this is what I intend to get done today. It's your to-be list. How do you want to show up today? What is your intention for the day? Whose life do you want to impact? And
Yeah.
how do you want to show up?
Yeah.
So you spend a minute just settling yourself in stillness. You think about what you're grateful for, and then you set your intention for the day.
I
It's
love
three
that.
minutes. Anybody can do that. And if you start doing that on a regular basis, it can really change your life because then when you're done, you are a different person. When you walk out of the room, when you go check on your kids, you have a whole different mindset.
Yes, that is so real. And the thing I love most, Jen, that you shared was this idea of starting really, really small. And I think oftentimes, especially when we're thinking about creating a new habit, working on our health in some way, supporting our mindset, it can really become overwhelming fast when we get into this thought process of I have to do all of these things, or it has to be this huge, massive overhaul of change. And you're speaking to how it doesn't have to be that way. Like it can really be a small, simple practice. And as you build that consistently over time, that's where profound change comes from. And it's so cool to
Yes.
hear that.
Right. And I
Yeah.
want women to know it can be as simple as that, just a
Yeah.
little way to get started.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer in the same thing. Like, I want women to feel like they can step into doing something manageable in the busy life they lead. And I love that this is just like a simple 3-minute practice that can help set up intention, gratitude, stillness, and all the things. So powerful, my friend. I love that. Is there anything else inside of the Flourish journey or everything that you teach beyond the joy triangle? Is there anything else that you feel like you'd like to share about how you work with women or how you empower women?
So I could talk about, if we have enough time, there's another step in the process so it is, the first journey is all 7 steps, but
Yeah.
there's another step that I think is pretty powerful for women who might be listening to, called the Flourish Checkpoint,
Yeah.
or it's essentially a current life assessment.
Yeah, I'd love for you to share that too.
And so the way I approach that is asking yourself questions. And I have 5 different areas. And this is something that you can sit down and maybe pretty quickly do it one day, but then come back to it and then come back to it. Because what I like to say is, you can't really move forward in your life until you understand where you are today.
Right.
So what I like you to think about is, who and what do you like in your life? So, okay, kind of what's working. Uh, but then go a little bit deeper. Who and what do you love in your life? Spend some time thinking about that. But then we also need to think about who and what might be hurting you in your
Yeah.
life. Who and what is maybe mistreating you or not showing up the way they could be. And so if you go through some of these questions, you start to come out with a list of things that you really like and care about. And so
Yeah.
you want to start to nourish those.
Yeah.
And then when you look at things about people or things or activities that are hurting you, you need to know that list too, because those are the things you want to start setting boundaries around, start doing less of. And the truth is, as women, sometimes it's ourselves that
Mhm.
we might be putting ourselves down.
Yep.
We might not be taking care of ourselves the way we should be. So take a good look at how you're showing up for yourself, because that's where I want you to do more things that nourish you, and then do less of the things that aren't serving you.
Yeah. And you're speaking to a really important piece to our overall well-being, which is boundaries. And that's something that takes a lot of time, practice, finessing, and just awareness. It's really this deep level awareness. Like you said, you kind of have to really go inward and ask yourself, what are the things that maybe I'm bringing on by not creating boundaries, but where else do I need to evaluate maybe isn't serving me anymore in a relationship, in a dynamic somewhere in my life, in a work environment, whatever it might be. And, that's one of the biggest and most productive introspective practices we can do as women, is saying, like, what's actually truly serving me and where do I need to create more boundaries. So I love that you're speaking on that. Then you teach that because it's so important.
Right. And then,
Yeah.
so as you said, boundaries are not always easy to
Yeah,
set.
they're not. No, they're not.
But when you go through this process and you start to understand, oh, the reason I want to set a boundary with that person is because they're not here for me. In fact, they
Yeah.
might be hurting me in some ways. It makes it easier to actually start setting that boundary and then sticking with that boundary.
Yeah. Sticking with it and being consistent with it. Just like even the joy triangle, like getting into those consistent practices. Like, consistency is the name of the game when we're really trying to create different kinds of levels of change in our life. And so thank you again, Jen, for sharing that, because it's important. It's an important reminder to always be thinking through when we're assessing, what really fulfills us in our life and how we maybe want to continue to move forward or rewrite our story, which I know you talk about a lot.
Mhm.
So I'd love to move into talking a little bit to the woman who maybe is listening to this and just feels like, you know what, this is great, but it's too late for me, right? It's too late for me. My life is already really hard in a lot of different ways. I'm already this age in my life. I already feel like I just don't even know how to start or where to start or how to get to this place of rewriting my story. I'd love to hear from you. What would you say to that woman who feels like she's just, it's too late. It's too far gone.
So I would have a lot to say to this
Yeah.
woman, but it would be a discussion. The first thing I would say, the most important thing I would say is, you can create a new story for your life. But I add to that, if not now, when?
Yeah.
And based on the things that we have gone through in our life, and we reach mid age and we start looking around, our mortality, we become more and more aware of our mortality. And
Yes.
having gone through some of the things I've gone through, but also having had a cancer diagnosis and being treated for cancer, I am just ultra aware literally every day that we don't know how many days we have left. And so
Yeah.
that is something that gets me to take action every day. It doesn't mean I'm always jumping up for joy,
Yeah.
but knowing the unknown, knowing that we don't know
Yeah.
how much time we have, if not now, when. So
Right.
I don't want you to be in this space for the rest of your years.
Yeah.
And it is not too late, because it doesn't matter what your age is. You can always start with the joy practice. It's
Yep.
something really tiny. But also be aware, as women, we just tend to negative self-talk to ourselves. Be aware that you don't feel the way you do because you've reached a certain age, and
Yeah.
society says, well, you're middle age, so you you are supposed to be tired, your
Yeah.
bones are supposed to hurt. That is not true.
Yeah.
What has happened, though, is you have had an accumulation over your lifetime of grief, trauma, challenges. And yes,
Yes.
it may have worn you down, but now today is when you can stand up to that and start making changes in your life.
Yes. 100%. And, I think that that kind of messaging is something that we can never hear enough, because you're right. Like, you get into this place in your head, especially when you are in midlife, where things have accumulated for so long that you kind of forget that you really are in control, and you start to kind of give that power away. And it really does
Mhm.
take like conversations like this, or working with a coach, talking to a counselor, like getting into community groups and being surrounded by this messaging of, oh no, it's not too late. Like, you have control and you have the power. So let's figure out the steps towards how you can really start to create the changes or rewrite whatever it is that means something to you, because it is totally possible. And I love that you're really speaking to that.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I want that woman to think about is, one of my steps is all about imagination and possibilities. And you may not wake up tomorrow and feel differently, but what I want this person to think about is it possible? So, is it possible that you could have a better life? Is it possible that you could feel better? Is it possible that you could start walking tomorrow and keep doing that? It's just that little mindset shift.
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Yeah. And the answer is yes. And I love
Mhm.
that. That's so good. Jen, will you share a little bit? You talked a lot about how you would speak to this woman who thinks that maybe it's too late. And obviously, you've gone through quite a significant journey of all of the things you've learned and now all of the things you teach. Talk a little bit about what you do in your day to day to really take care of yourself. Make sure you're working towards flourishing over 50. Make sure that you're really stepping into rewriting the story the way you're envisioning. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like on a day-to-day basis.
So number one is I do practice the joy practice every day. It's
Yeah.
just something that I have now baked into my life. I make sure that I do it every day. And for me, one of the most important parts, so stillness to me is very, very important. I have to have that time alone, that quiet time, but I focus on the intention part. So throughout my day, I'm trying to think through what is my intention with this activity?
Yeah.
What is my intention with my children? So, for example, when I'm with my children, I try just to be with them and be in the moment. And I think that's really hard for so
Yeah.
many of us, to be in the moment. So I try to live there's this duality here, because I talk about, okay, we don't know how much time we have left.
Yeah.
So I help women create a dreamscape for their life. And so, part of my everyday life is, okay, what was on my dreamscape and how can I work towards that?
Yeah.
But also, being in the present moment when I'm with people that I care about.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a mix. I also spend time every day thinking about what do I want to put out in the world, and how do I want to spend my time.
Yeah.
So I try to make sure I love to get on my Peloton and, maybe it might be a short class, but try to
Yeah.
do a class.
Yeah.
Getting outside and walking is really important to me. And all of these things came up when I went through this process of kind of creating my dreamscape. Because
Yeah.
when I do the dreamscape exercise, and anybody can do this, but one of the most important exercises is starting to design your ideal day.
Yeah.
So actually walking through using your five senses, what do I want my ideal day to look like? And it doesn't start off that tomorrow is maybe your ideal day, but things like, okay, I want to spend outside. Like I want to spend time outside was one of my things. So I'll try to get outside and walk every
Yeah.
day. So
Yeah.
I try to take pieces from that and build them into my everyday.
Yeah, and that's so good. And that's it, like you said, you're speaking to these very, very simple practices that sometimes can feel a little challenging to implement because we live in these busy, full lives with all kinds of communication and things happening and coming at us at all points of time. But really, when you get into understanding, like you said, what does your ideal day look like? And then what are the things that you should learn to lean on in order to create that day? Like in order to really create that feeling. And it really comes down to all of these different facets of wellness and learning how our body and brain are fueled with very intentional habit practices, like getting outside in the sun, like
Mm-hmm.
spending time in stillness and being in the present moment. Like all of those things really matter for our overall well-being. And I love that you're really working to consistently practice that as you think about how you want to show up for your life and kind of step into that dreamscape that you've created. It's so powerful to hear.
Oh,
I
and
love
it is
that.
a practice. It
Yeah.
is a practice. I don't want it to sound like I'm doing everything perfect every day, because I know for all of you out there, that's probably not possible. But what
Yeah.
is possible is just, practicing what you can on a regular basis.
Yes. And, that's something I talk about all the time in the work I do is we're working to master the art of imperfection. Like this is
Yes.
never going to be every single day is picture perfect. Every single day we do all the things we've set out to do, right? Or we've set the intention to do because let's be real, life happens. And so it's more about like identifying the things that help you feel a certain way or help you show up the way you want to, and then consistently working to get a little bit better every single day at implementing those things more and more over time. Like
Right.
that's the goal, right? That's the goal. So Jen, I've loved everything you've shared today. It's just been so profound to hear your story, how you encourage, empower women, and really what you've talked about as far as, building into this day-to-day practice in order to help yourself kind of build the awareness you need as far as how you want to show up for your life. My last
Mhm.
question for you before we kind of officially move into wrap up is kind of more on the mindset side of things, right? I know we've talked a little bit about, what if there's someone out there that feels like it's too late? I want to kind of flip it and say, what do we say, or what would you say to the woman that knows that she wants to rewrite her story? She's ready to kind of step into this next phase of her life. And in this season, she wants to make these changes, but she's dealing with maybe some of that negative self-talk, or she doesn't know how to take the steps to build the resilience and things like that. What kind of mindset shifts or soundtrack shifts do you feel like would be really powerful for her to start to adopt?
So what I'm going to talk about really, real briefly, for this is, I love when a woman's like ready to take action.
Yeah.
And I have a couple things. So one is create a little, what I call a Soul Sparks Toolkit, which is things like music, books, poetry, maybe listening to this podcast, that really lights you up.
Yeah.
So when you're feeling a little down, or you're not quite sure, you're not quite ready, turn on that soundtrack that really boosts you up. So I like women to be surrounded by things that can really uplift them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a friend that lifts you up. Maybe it's a community or someone to get coffee with, or a movie, or just so think about what are those things that really light me up.
Yeah.
and that can reignite your soul. So you're there, you're ready for it, but we all need a little motivation. And so
Mhm.
if you have these things that they're ready, that's one great tip. I go through a whole process of all the different things that you can put together for yourself. It's like a curated toolkit for when
Yeah.
you're not quite ready, but you know
Yeah.
you want to do something, so it'll boost you back up. And then my last step in my process is essentially called day one, which
Yeah.
is taking that first little step. So it can be something really small. Think about holding on to a stone and you drop it into a lake and it ripples out.
Yeah.
So it's, what is that one little stone for you? Is it just taking that first walk around the block? Is it buying that great salad at the store so you can start making salads for yourself?
Yeah.
What exactly is it that you need to just start, and just one small step, and you'll see
Yeah.
the ripple effects throughout your life?
Yeah, and that's so true. It really is that ripple, that waterfall that can start with these small, simple things, which you keep reiterating, which I love more than anything, because that's what I want women to understand. It doesn't have to be this huge all or nothing mentality. It can really be giving yourself permission to, first of all, know that you deserve to create change or rewrite your story in some way. And then second, know that you are 100% capable of taking one small step that will change and ripple over time. And so, Jen, I love everything that you've shared, my friend. Thank you so much for your incredible perspective
Thank
today.
you.
Will you quickly share, how can people find you if they'd like to learn more about your work? I know you're an author and so much more. So share a little bit more about how people can find you.
So I am at Flourishing Over 50 with the 50 spelled out on Facebook and Instagram. And my website is exactly the same.
Awesome.
But mostly Instagram and Facebook just to start hearing more about all these things.
Awesome. That sounds great, Jen. And we will make sure everything is linked in the show notes of this podcast. If you'd like to connect with Jen, learn more about her work, and get connected to the amazing things that she's doing, please make sure you go to the show notes to check that out. And Jen, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you, Erin.
Of course. Take care. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.